I recall they wasn't singing the national anthem that day. They was actually screaming it like they was going to shove it down our throats. Yeah, John Collins is my name. Track and field used to be my game. This is my story. This is my struggle. When you sit back and think about that demonstration, as I stated, how many times that you've known in your life that they really expressed to you what that demonstration was all about? They have it in the history books with no explanation whatsoever. They just have a little line underneath, say, John Carlson, Tommy Smith was in 1968 in the Olympics, gave the Black Power salute. But why they gave it to it, why they did it, how they did it, why was it necessary to do, none of that is in there. You hear documentaries, in the documentaries they tell pretty much their story. They don't tell our story.
That was one of the most important moments within sports history.
They made a statement. They made a statement.
They were speaking out against the Vietnam War, against race relationships, against, as you call it, tyranny. They thought it was tyranny in the United States, and they didn't want to have that pressure. And people are realizing that the statement was right. They didn't want to be a second-class citizen. They didn't want us be put on the back of the bus.
When these two guys get together, it's not if we get on the podium, it's look, when we get these medals, okay, when we get these medals, we're gonna go up and protest.
And that's a powerful position to be in. And you know, when you're talking about the Olympics, you've worked for 4 years to get there, you've had success there, and now you're gonna make a stand.
Big thing is a person of conviction like that, right? If they don't take the moment, probably has a harder time living with themselves than they do dealing with the ramifications from that. What can never be counted is the number of people who found hope in knowing that a world champion, right, is concerned about me, can relate to me, knows my struggle, understands my pain, and is willing to sacrifice for my gain.
I see a lot of youngsters right now when they come to me and they take a picture and they want me to put the fist to the sky, and I tell them, I say, I don't do that anymore. You do it. And they say, well, how come you don't do it anymore, Mr. Collins? I say, because I want you to do it so I can point to you. And they say, why you want me to point to you? I say, I want to point to you so I can illustrate that the baton has been exchanged. Now you have an understanding as to why I put my fist to the sky.
And the picture of all three of you up there, it's such an iconic picture, and people can always reference it more than sometimes the issues surrounding it or the great things that you did afterwards. That picture, why do you think it's so vivid in many people's minds?
If you sit back and you think about it, you can go back to last century, and I don't think you're going to find anything that matches that picture, that demonstration relative to evolving every year, every day, every week, every month, every year. You see this on TV, or you see it in a magazine, or you see it on a t-shirt or in a history book. When we went there with the intent to do a service for humanity. We had an Olympic project for humanity going on. It wasn't a demonstration to show black power, black pride. We was concerned about humanity, mankind. For all people that was oppressed, irregardless of what their ethnic background was, that they would use this picture as a beacon of strength, a beacon of courage to withstand all of the oppressions that they had to deal with for the duration of their lives. But the right-wing media at that particular time, they had control of the press 1,000%. So they tried and paint us as two-headed dragons, as militants, and they tried to make it into a black power movement, and which intimidated a lot of people, it frightened a lot of people.
I'm a big believer that everything happens for a reason. Now, leading into that Olympics, you, along with some others, wanted to boycott the Olympics. That didn't end up happening. Do you think, in hindsight, what ended up happening was more powerful than a boycott would have been?
I believe far more powerful. We tried to get young individuals at that time that had the greatest opportunity to make the Olympic team, to ask them to consider stepping back from the Olympics, to give up their 15 minutes in the sun, to do something far greater than going to win a medal. But, you know, many individuals are raised with the theory that the Olympic Games is the greatest spectacle that you could ever be involved in. it's difficult to back away from that carrot, so to speak. You know, individuals made statements, well, you know, I trained all my life to go. I promised my church, I promised my community, I owe it to my family, I owe it to myself. We couldn't tell them, well, you just have to give up all that. All we could do was try and educate them as to why we felt it was necessary for us to consider a boycott. When we took the final vote, the vote came that they wanted to go. We didn't have the right to tell them that, well, you can't go, you shouldn't go. We agreed with them. But Mr. Smith and I got together and decided that we wanted to carry it on a little farther. And as I said, based on how everything was formulated, because it wasn't anything planned until roughly 25, 30 minutes before we went out there, in terms of what we were going to bring to the table in terms of artifacts, how we were going to apply the artifacts, how we were going to walk out to the podium, and what we were going to do. And that's why I say I think that it was divine, because everything was perfect. You know, you couldn't add anything or take anything away from the way we went out there and did what we did. No one in the stadium knew what was going to happen. No one in the world knew other than Tommy Smith and John Carlos.
The other misnomer is that it was an issue where you lost your medals because of it, which is also not true.
Well, that was just out and out propaganda. They came and said they were going to take our medals, and I stepped forward and told them, I said, listen, let me just make it real clear. The medal doesn't mean anything to John Carlos. I said, I don't know about Mr. Smith, but as far as John Carlos go, the medal don't mean anything to me. I said, but the bottom line is, you didn't give me this medal. You set a mandate, I met the mandate. You said qualifying rounds, I met the qualifying rounds. I went through the elimination process at the Olympic Games. I earned my right to be on the victory stand and receive that medal. So if you're talking about you coming to take this medal, bring the militia, because you're gonna need them. I said, as I stated to them, the medal didn't mean anything to me, but it would probably mean a lot to my kids. So you're not gonna just come and take my medal. So they backed away. But in turn, what they did, they created this propaganda and lie to tell kids that they took our medal. Why did they tell kids that? Because they wanted to put blinders on them to the point where they can't see to the left or see to the right. They can't see their community. They can't see society as a whole in terms of whether it's a productive society for all people. All they want to do is see the carrot and tell them, say, if you step out of the circle and you think about your fellow man, or you think about what's happening in somebody's life in terms of whether they have a decent start or a decent chance in life, you're going to lose that carrot. Remember, we took John Carlos's medal away. If you step out of line, we're going to take your medal away too.
Did you ever not regret the decision, but regret what it did to your family?
That's the only regret that I have, is that I didn't take better care of my family. I didn't, think it all the way through in terms of how I could protect my family better. I don't think it would have changed anything in terms of me making the demonstration, because the demonstration was greater than me or my family. But I just don't think that I safeguarded my family as much as I needed to. Being young, you think you do something that all the reprisals and so forth is going to come to you. You don't think it's going to come to your family or affect your family. So if I have a regret, that would be the regret. The fact that I lost my first wife as a result of what happened in Mexico City. The fact that my kids had to endure things when they went to school by faculty as well as students. Those are the regrets that I had. The fact that my kids had to miss a lot of Christmases based on the fact that I didn't have employment. I couldn't give them the things that other kids had at that particular time based on what their father might have stood for in his life. I remember times where I couldn't pay the electric bill. If you didn't have heat in your house, sometimes the weather be so bad, so cold, you have to figure out what you're going to do to try and keep your family as safe and healthy as possible. And I remember waking my kids up in the middle of the night one night and having them go take all their clothes out of the little dresser drawers and pull the furniture into the hall and had a claw hammer and just started breaking the furniture up. And I remember my wife looking at me like I lost my mind. And I really didn't lose my mind as much as I lost my opportunity to support my family in the ways that I felt I needed to. So I had to chop this furniture up and go put it in the fireplace and tell my wife and my kids to go get their pillows and come around the fireplace. And I had to make my wife understand, don't worry about this furniture. We'll get it again. But we can't be concerned about furniture because we might not be able to get another kid if we lose our kids as a result of this.
You mentioned all the struggles that you went through. You went through them so that people after you wouldn't have to go through them.
Absolutely.
But still in North America, a lot of people are going through the same issues that they went through back then, that you went through. Is that a little bit disheartening?
Well, you know, I sit back and I wonder to myself, had we done what we did, things might be bad now, but I'm wondering whether things would have been a lot worse at this place and time had we did what we did. It's about what you did from the time you came in this world until the time you left this world. It's about that 9 innings in the game, man. How well did you perform in that 9 innings? Because you know the 9th inning is coming one day. You know you're moving up to the front pew in life. The question is whether you stayed on the horn to make it a better life, not necessarily for yourself or for your peers and for your kids and their peers. This is our story. This is our struggle. Pass the torch.